Welcome to Get the Facts. Today we talk budget, and our resource person is financial analyst Dennis Chung. Dennis, the minister has tabled a budget which is just less than $1 billion more than last year. What's your first impression?
Yeah, I'm happy about the fact that the budget is relatively flat.
Yes.
Because when you look at it, the debt amortization has gone down by $9 billion. So effectively what it means is that you have an additional $9 billion that can go into expenditure within the economy. So it's a good thing. The other thing when I look at the budget is that it's clear that the policy of the government is to go after law and order issues.
Right,
and
because of the amount that is allocated to
national security. And also, very importantly, the judiciary system. So what you see now is that where the judiciary system was divided into various segments like the Supreme Court and that sort of thing, they've now combined it into one, which speaks to maybe they're getting somewhere with the court management system, and they've increased the budget from a recurrent side by 25% on the judiciary system, which is good.
Right.
They've also increased things like the budget for the Auditor General recurring expenses have increased by 13%, and for things like the Office of the Child Advocate by 11%. It suggests to me that the government is pushing to address the infrastructural and other issues that have been plaguing us and preventing us from growing. So
you
for me, it's a good thing.
About infrastructure. But Dennis, you just mentioned recurrent and capital. Tell us, explain to our viewers, what do we mean? The budget is made up of two elements, not two accounts.
Right.
Explain that for us.
Your recurrent expenditure is expenditure that when you spend on it, it is consumed within the year. So salaries, for example, you pay salaries every month, and that is a recurring expenditure. Or if you have expenses for stationery, things that you use every day, those are things that are consistent. You're always paying them. Okay. The capital expenditure are one-time expenditures. So if you build a hospital right in this location today, you're not going to build a hospital next year again in this location. That hospital will serve you for maybe 50 years. So that's a capital item. Things that have a use for longer than a year is regarded as capital item. Road infrastructure, buildings, motor cars, that sort of thing is capital.
You talked about hospital just now. The Ministry of Health on the capital side has got some 3.7 billion. Yes,
1.8 billion increase, or 97% over last year. That for me says that they're going to be focusing on upgrading the facilities, the hospital facilities, maybe through buildings or new equipment. So this is an excellent move, I think, because what it means is that you're going to have more services for persons in the community. The
Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation has gotten, on the capital side, some 18 billion.
Right. It's actually a reduction by 11.1 from 29.6 billion. However, it's still a substantial amount of money. And what has been said is that they're going to focus a lot on dealing with the issues of squatting and informal settlements, and maybe upgrading some of that infrastructure, because it's a problem.
Yes. There is something to say about the allocation to the Ministry of Finance, because since we're having less debt servicing, but it seems to me like the recurrent is more than it was last time.
Yeah, that might be because of the increase in salaries, right? So some of the increases that you see is a 4% increase in salaries across the board, so you're going to see some of that increase happening across the ministries for that.
And also the monies that would be allocated to debt servicing, which is now, as you said, is 9 billion less.
9 billion less on the debt amortization.
Explain the debt amortization for
debt amortization. If I borrow $100 and I'm paying back 10% a year, then I'll be paying interest of $10 on a debt of $100. The debt amortization is when you start paying against the principal, which is the $100. So in addition to paying the $10, you pay down the $100 so that you're accruing less interest each year. So it's a good thing when we do that. Now, when you look at the debt to GDP ratio, which is something that's very important, we're now going to be below 100%. The last time that happened is 20 years ago. You know, so I don't think people realize how significant that is, because the less debt you have is the more money that you have to spend on the economy, on social services, on capital infrastructure and that sort of thing. And I think that is what we're seeing coming out of the budget now, because debt servicing has reduced from 37% of the budget to 34%, which is significant. At one point when we were almost on the brink of disaster, we were over 60% paying out debt. So if you earn $1,000 a week and you're paying all of that in debt, you don't have the money to live.
Yes.
The less we pay in debt, it means that we actually have more money now to pump into the economy.
Yes. Why is it important for people to understand the budget and at least to pay attention? It seems at budget time, so some people that listen and some say, oh, it doesn't matter. Why? Tell us why it is important for us as the citizen in general to understand.
Well, it's important for us to understand because the budget, whatever happens in the budget, affects all of us. So the way the government spends the money affects you. You know, the way government put on new taxes affects you also. So it's important for you to know that, just from the point of view of understanding as a citizen how you're going to be affected by these things and what the policy shifts are. But importantly also, I mean, if you're a business person and you're looking at the budget, you can tell where the expenditures are going to happen. And you can say, okay, let me shift my business to take advantage of the expenses that are coming. So if I look at this and I see that the NWC, for example, is going to be spending billions more, I mean, that is infrastructure work. The hospitals are going to be there. So from a business point of view, I was saying, okay, so it means that there's going to be more construction work available, which means that there's going to be more money for spending. So maybe these are the products that I should be looking at, you know, our services. So it helps from that point of view. I mean, you can't live, it's like living in a household and not knowing how your money is budgeted. You know, you have a problem after a while.
Yes. We're talking budget on Get the Facts this week, and our guest is financial analyst Dennis Chung. We take a break. We'll come right back.
Keep we island clean, so clean. From the streets to the beach, so clean. No dirty up Jamaica, please don't do it.
Jamaica, join a beach cleanup in your parish on International Coastal Cleanup Day 2015 on Saturday, September 19. No dirty up Jamaica and help clean up Jamaica's beaches. Get more information about International Coastal Cleanup Day at nodirtyupjamaica.org.
No dirty up Jamaica.
Welcome back. I'm Enthros Campbell. Our guest this week is financial analyst Dennis Chung, and yes, we're talking budget. Welcome back. Tell me now, what are some of the other positives?
Well, for me, I think that if you look at where the economy is going, right, and the developments that have been happening, I think that the country is in a very good situation, right, to project itself. But what we've been seeing is that we've been restricted. We sort of hit a glass ceiling in terms of growth, you know, 2%. And when you look at what they're doing in this budget, it seems to be attacking a lot of those things, those inhibitors that have been preventing us from moving up from the 2%. I also think that, you know, outside of the budget, you know, in me talking to some of the people out there, the policymakers and the persons in authority, I think that certain actions and steps are being taken to address some of the issues we have outside of the budget, because the budget is just...
What are some of these?
Well, I can speak at NSWMA, for example. We're going to be carrying 100 garbage trucks this year. That is going to significantly impact the services that are out there. Some of the legislation that's coming on stream from our perspective at NSWMA, like the e-waste, for example, the Road Traffic Act, these things are going to modernize the legislation and in conjunction with things like road improvements and that sort of thing, if you have a more modernized legislation, I mean, the money that you look at for the justice system here and Ministry of Education, I suspect includes a new traffic system, ticketing system, for example, also. What it means is that when you look at all of those things combined, the strategies that the Commissioner of Police has, you know, I've had the opportunity to speak to him in terms of crime fighting. You put all of those things together, we're moving more towards the Vision 2030 of the place of choice to live. And that is what I love about everything coming together.
Yes. So the minister is going to be making a presentation in Parliament on March 7, and then he will explain, you know, how the budget will be financed and so on. But people, when they start listening, are confused with some of the terms. So help us with some of the terms. For example, GDP.
Your gross domestic product is really the amount of goods that and services you produce within the country. So if the thing is produced overseas and imported, it's not a part of your gross domestic product. But once it's produced locally, it's a part of your production within the country, and it goes towards your gross domestic product, as the term says, your gross domestic product.
Right. Why is it important to have a good level of NIR, and what is it?
All right, because the NIR is like an insurance policy, right? So the standard is to have your NIR representing 12 weeks of import. So if something happens that there can be no production, for example, in the country for 12 weeks, at least we have 12 weeks worth of savings put aside. So it's like you were saying, you know, I'm not going to be working for the next 3 months. At least I have 3 months worth of money put aside, you know, and financial analysts will always tell you one of the most important things to do is put aside money that can last you for 3 to 6 months, so that if anything happens, anything can happen at all, you know, you have money to live. And basically that's what your NIR is.
Right. The government is guided by a fiscal policy. Right. Tell us a little bit more about the fiscal policy and some of the things that came up this year.
Well, the fiscal policy really is really policy that emanates from the government, the central government point of view. So, you know, things like your direction in terms of taxes, you know, that is fiscal policy. Your direction in terms of how you deal with security, that is fiscal policy. The opposite to that, or the accompanying policy to that, people always talk about is monetary policy, which then is managed by the Bank of Jamaica. So things like money supply, inflation, and that sort of thing is monetary policy affected. But fiscal policy is any policy driven by the government that deals with the management of the economy.
Why shouldn't the average person be concerned about inflation and where it's at?
Well, inflation is very important, because if you have inflation look at Venezuela, for example, they're having inflation of 1,000,000% a year, which means that price on average is going up 1,000,000% a year. If your salary is going up 10% a year and prices are going up 1,000,000% a year, you have a problem. So it means inflation is very important, because inflation tells you how much prices have moved over the year or whatever period of time you're measuring. And it's important for the individual, because if your salary is not keeping pace in terms of moving with inflation, then it means that you're going to be earning less money from a real point of view.
So do we have a role to play in inflation?
Right? We can be more productive, you know, very important. The more of us that are working and producing, it means that you have more goods out there. We can be more responsible with our spending in terms of controlling inflation also, because it means that the more things that we are buying that are imported, it contributes to inflation also, for example. So things like the efficient use of gasoline is very important.
We can't end this interview without talking about growth.
Growth is targeted about 2% this year. The growth really is how much from after taking out inflation, how much you have moved the production needle. So if I'm earning $100 today and I have produced goods to start earning $110, then I would have grown by 10% or $10. So that is always important, because the more you grow is the more activity, economic activity you have out there, more income that's earned, more taxes that come in, and the lower the debt to GDP ratio.
So is this projection of 2%? Is it realistic?
It is very realistic. I personally think we should be more, and this is why I like the budget, because the budget is addressing the issue now of us not being able to get beyond that 2%. You know, so if you fix these infrastructural issues, then you can get to 3 to maybe 5%.
Yes, thank you so much. Right. This has been Get the Facts, and our focus was the budget, 2019-2020 budget. Our resource person was financial analyst Dennis Chung. And the Ministry of Finance will put out a supplement next Sunday helping us to understand the budget, and it will be in the various newspapers, so look out for that. I'm Ben Campbell. This has been Get the Facts. See you next time.